The moment the message turned blue, Maddie Brooks felt her entire world tremble. She stood on a cracked Brooklyn sidewalk, snow falling in soft flakes against her coat, clutching her old iPhone like it was the last piece of hope she had left. Her fingers shook as she typed the words she'd rehearsed for hours. "Connor, I'm pregnant. Please call me. I'm scared." For 3 long seconds, the typing bubble appeared. She held her breath, her heartbeat pounding louder than the traffic behind her. Then nothing. The bubble vanished. Her call went straight to voicemail. Another attempt, blocked, and another, blocked again. She whispered his name through chattering teeth. "Connor, don't do this to me, please." But the snow kept falling, and the screen stayed call. She didn't know that, in a penthouse high above Manhattan, Connor Hale stared at her message with panic clawing at his throat. His mother, Evelyn Hale, CEO of the Hale Empire, the woman back. Maddie. She did. And she definitely didn't know he hadn't just abandoned her, he had underestimated her. And that would be his biggest mistake. Maddie Brooks had never imagined her life would split cleanly into 2 eras, before the block and after the block. Before, she was just a 6-year-old design assistant trying to survive New York City on tip money and stubborn hope. After, she became a woman forced to rebuild from ashes she never asked for. Back then, Maddie lived in a cramped basement apartment in Brooklyn, a space barely big enough for a bed, a thrift store dresser, and a table where she sketched designs late into the night. She worked double shifts at a neighborhood cafe, rushing between tables with a tired smile, praying for tips generous enough to cover groceries. But even in exhaustion, she carried a softness, a warmth that made customers ask for her by name. Her dream was simple: to become a real interior designer, the kind whose work appeared in glossy magazines. She attended night classes at a small design school, sometimes arriving with wet hair from the rain, sometimes with tear-stained cheeks after a brutal shift. But she never missed a class. Her notebooks were thick with hand-drawn floor plans and color palettes she couldn't afford to buy. And then there was Connor Hale, the charming, polished finance heir who walked into the cafe one afternoon and left with more than just a latte. He left with her heart. Maddie had never dated someone like him, someone who wore tailored coats and carried himself like the future belonged to him. He made her feel special, chosen, as though she mattered in a city that barely noticed when people disappeared. For a while, life felt perfect. They shared cheap takeout on her tiny bed. They watched old movies on her laptop. And Connor always told her she was meant for something bigger. "You have vision, Maddie," he'd say, tracing her hand. "One day, people will fight to hire you." She believed him. She believed every word, because she wanted to. Then life shifted like a rug pulled from under her feet. Losing her job at the studio felt like an accident. The email was cold, impersonal, the kind New York sent to thousands every year. She cried quietly in the bathroom, splashing water on her face before heading to her shift at the cafe. But the worst news came days later: 2 pink lines on a cheap drugstore test. Her hands shook so badly she had to sit on the edge of the bathtub. Her first instinct was to call Connor. He didn't answer. Maybe he was working late, maybe he was asleep. She told herself 1,000 excuses. But deep down, something icy settled in her chest. Something that whispered she was about to face a kind of loneliness she wasn't ready for. And she was right. Because the moment she finally sent the message, "I'm pregnant," her world collapsed. Not with a scream, not with an argument, but with a single digital slap, blocked. After that night, Maddie learned what survival truly meant. She pawned her jewelry, she sold half her clothes, she drove Uber at night to pay for prenatal vitamins. She worked until her ankles swelled and her back throbbed. And still, every morning she promised her unborn child the same thing: "I will make a life for us. I will not let this city swallow us." 8 years later, the world would see a polished, confident woman with talent powerful enough to command entire boardrooms. But the truth was simple. Her strength was built in silence. Her courage was carved from betrayal. Her future was born the day Connor Hale tried to erase her. And fate, as it turned out, had kept the receipts. New York had always been a city with sharp edges, glittering for some, unforgiving for others. For Maddie Brooks, it became both her battlefield and her rebirth. 8 years after the night she was left alone in the snow, the city no longer swallowed her whole. Instead, it held its breath when she walked into a room. Her life now unfolded between two worlds, the polished skyline of Manhattan and the quiet warmth of her cozy studio in Brooklyn, where she raised her son, Liam. Every morning began with sunlight pouring through her small kitchen window, warming the wooden table where Liam ate cereal while she reviewed design drafts on her MacBook Air. He was 8 now, gentle and brilliant, with eyes that carried more depth than any child should have. She never told him the full story of his father, only that they had built their life together, just the two of them. And that was enough. But the professional world Maddie stepped into each day was a different universe entirely. Her boutique design studio, Brooks Atelier, had grown from a single desk in her apartment into a well-respected name whispered among Manhattan's elite. Her work blended warmth with modern elegance, giving life to penthouses overlooking Central Park and corporate lobbies on Fifth Avenue. Wealthy clients loved her eye for detail, the way she listened, the way she transformed a room into something alive. And one of those clients, Julian Mercer, had unknowingly changed the entire trajectory of her life. Julian, a billionaire architect and real estate developer, had hired her 3 years ago to redesign the lobby of Mercer Tower, a skyscraper of steel and glass that cut through the clouds above Park Avenue. Their collaboration was supposed to be temporary, but her creativity impressed him so deeply that he continued offering her new projects, each one larger than the last. Maddie didn't realize it then, but Julian wasn't just investing in her talent, he was betting on her future. The luxury world she moved through now was intoxicating boardrooms lined with marble, meetings held in high-rise offices with skyline views, late-night project reviews in penthouses, where the walls shimmered with soft gold accents. Her workdays were a blur of Montblanc pens, polished sample boards, and clients who spoke in million-dollar vocabulary. But even as she navigated this world with grace, she remained grounded, never forgetting the basement apartment where she once cried herself to sleep. Still, for all her progress, there were shadows she didn't dare confront, especially the shadow of the Hale family empire. She knew Hale Tech, their tech conglomerate. She saw their name on the sides of skyscrapers, on billboards glowing in Times Square. She even passed their headquarters sometimes, a towering structure of glass and steel that seemed to dare the world to challenge it. She didn't know fate was about to take her challenge personally. One crisp autumn afternoon, as golden leaves swirled across the pavement, Maddie received an unexpected email, an invitation to lead the interior redesign for a major corporate merger announcement at the Plaza Hotel. It was the kind of opportunity that could elevate her firm into the international spotlight. She skimmed the details, budget, expectations, timeline, until her eyes stopped on one line. Primary corporate partner, Hale Tech. Her pulse stilled. For the first time in years, New York's glitter felt cold again. Her hands trembled as she closed her laptop. The city outside her window sparkled, indifferent and brilliant. Life had brought her full circle, not gently, but with a force that made her breath hitch. And the man who once erased her was now standing unknowingly on the path she was destined to cross again. Connor Hale had the kind of face people trusted at first sight, clean-cut, bright smile, tailored charm. To the world, he was the picture-perfect financial heir, disciplined, educated, effortlessly charismatic. Reporters praised his strategic mind. Investors admired his composure. Society, women whispered about his elegance at charity galas. He was the Hale legacy wrapped in a bespoke suit, but beneath that polished exterior lived a man built on cowardice and convenience, a man who avoided guilt the same way he avoided eye contact with his own reflection. 8 years earlier, when Maddie had texted him about the pregnancy, Connor had been sitting in his father's leather armchair, sipping a glass of expensive scotch he never paid for. His mother, Evelyn Hale, had stood at the window, her silhouette crisp against the Manhattan skyline. "She'll ruin you," Evelyn said, her voice as cold as the marble floors beneath her heels. "You think our family can afford a scandal with your father's health failing? Block her. And forget this ever happened." Connor had done exactly that, not because he agreed, but because fear had been stitched into him since childhood. Fear of disappointing Evelyn, fear of losing status, fear of stepping outside the carefully curated life she controlled. Now, 8 years later, Connor carried that fear like a quiet parasite beneath his expensive suits. As CFO of Hale Tech, he moved through the towering headquarters like a prince in a castle he didn't build. Analysts followed him, Assistants admired him. Photographers captured him at business summits, where he spoke about innovation and leadership. Every article named him the future of Hale Group. Every board meeting praised his brilliance. Only Evelyn knew how fragile that brilliance was. She managed every step of his ascent, from manipulating competitors to arranging a strategic engagement between Connor and Vanessa Carrington, daughter of a powerful investor family. Their relationship lacked warmth, but it served its purpose. Vanessa's last name strengthened the Hale reputation. Her connections opened doors, and Connor, ever the obedient son, played the doting fiancé. But lately, cracks had begun to split through Connor's flawless image. Sloppy accounting buried beneath layers of inflated numbers. Mismanaged funds redirected to undisclosed development. Risky bets made without board approval. All small enough to hide, but deadly enough to destroy him if exposed. And Evelyn suspected. She watched him with the sharp eyes of a hawk sensing weakness. She asked pointed questions in private. She referred him to in-house auditors just to keep things clean. And worst of all, she spoke to Vanessa's father, Arthur Carrington, about keeping Connor focused. Connor felt the noose tightening every day. That was why the upcoming merger announcement at the Plaza Hotel meant everything. The deal would bring in billions, secure his position, and convince the board he deserved to become CEO someday. If he pulled this off, all whispers about financial discrepancies would disappear. Failure was not an option, not when Evelyn still controlled every corner of his world. On the morning he reviewed the event portfolio, his assistant placed a folder on the desk. "These are the design plans for the merger announcement," she said. "The lead designer is Madeline Brooks." Connor froze. For the first time in years, guilt raw, suffocating, grabbed him by the throat. He told himself it couldn't be her. Maddie Brooks was a common name. New York was a big city. But something in his chest twisted painfully. He opened the folder. The first page held a rendering of the Plaza Ballroom, warm light, bold architecture, elegant textures. The signature at the bottom read, Madeline Brooks, lead designer, Brooks Atelier. His breath hitched. Maddie. She wasn't gone. She wasn't destroyed. She had risen higher than he ever imagined. A chill ran through him as he stared at her name. And for the first time since he blocked her, Connor Hale felt fear. Real fear. The kind that warns a man his past is coming back, not quietly, but with consequences sharp enough to cut through everything he built. The email sat on Maddie's screen like a ghost from another lifetime, one she thought she had buried beneath years of grit, sacrifice, and late-night tears. Haletech. The Plaza Hotel. Multi-billion-dollar merger. Lead designer, Brooks Atelier. Her studio, her work, her name. But none of it felt like a triumph. Not when the name Hale still carried the sting of a winter night where she stood alone, pregnant, frightened, and erased with a single tap of Connor's thumb. She closed her eyes and inhaled slowly, letting the cool morning air from her open window steady her heartbeat. Manhattan hummed outside, taxis honking, vendors shouting, the world moving without sympathy. In the kitchen, her son Liam hummed as he packed his school folder, unaware that his mother's past had just knocked on the door she thought she had sealed shut. "Mom?" Liam peeked around the doorway. "You okay?" Her voice wavered before settling. "Yeah, sweetheart. Just a big project came in today." Liam flashed a proud grin, the same grin that had carried her through the darkest days. "You always do great. You're the best designer in the world." She kissed his forehead. "Thank you, baby. That means everything." But once he left for school, the silence felt heavier. Maddie opened the file again, scanning the contract line by line. It was perfect, too perfect. The budget was enormous. The exposure would be career-changing. The event had the potential to place Brooks Atelier on the international map. Yet her stomach twisted with every word. Haletech wasn't just a company. It was a door to the past she had spent 8 years rebuilding herself from. A past filled with nights driving Uber until dawn because her prenatal vitamins cost more than her meals. Days when she worked through back pain, swollen ankles, and constant fear of eviction. Mornings when she woke praying she could stretch one more week out of the little savings she had left. A past where she whispered promises to an unborn child that she had no idea how to keep. And the cruelest part? She never knew that some of her suffering had been designed. Evelyn Hale had orchestrated her firing. The blacklisting, the ruined opportunities. Maddie had blamed herself for years, believing she simply wasn't good enough. But someone had known. Julian Mercer. That afternoon, Maddie visited his office at Mercer Tower. The elevator opened into a penthouse workspace of glass and clean lines, where sunlight poured over architectural models like spotlighted sculptures. Julian looked up from his desk, reading her expression immediately. "You saw the contract," he said quietly. She nodded. He leaned back, studying her with the same steady gaze he used when evaluating the structural integrity of a skyscraper. "Do you want to walk away from it?" Maddie hesitated. "It's not that simple." "No," Julian agreed. "It isn't. Not when the past is involved." Maddie swallowed hard. "He doesn't know about Liam." Julian didn't answer. He didn't need to. She paced the room, her footsteps echoing against the polished floor. "If I take this project, Connor will be there. He'll see me. He'll tend to. He might put things together. And if you don't take it," Julian said, "you hand him power he doesn't deserve." She stopped walking. The words hit deeper than she expected. Julian stepped closer, lowering his voice. "You built yourself from nothing, Maddie. Not for him. For you. For your son. You don't owe Connor fear." She stared out the window at the skyline, towering, relentless, bold. A city that once devoured her. A city she now had the chance to conquer. When she finally spoke, her voice was soft but steady. "I'll take the project." Julian nodded, pride flickering behind his calm expression. But deep in her chest, Maddie felt something else rise, a storm she wasn't sure she could contain. Because walking into the plaza meant walking straight into the man who broke her and revealing the woman he never expected her to become. The week leading up to the plaza project felt like walking through a minefield, every step quiet, careful, loaded with memories Maddie wished she could erase. The closer the event came, the more her past clawed up from the shadows she had buried it in. Even the city itself seemed to conspire, whispering reminders through familiar streets and subway ads bearing the Hailtech logo. She had learned to avert her gaze, but now there was no avoiding them. Her studio buzzed with movement. Assistants ran sketches between workstations, samples covered every table, and the air smelled of fresh linen and architectural glue. It should have been a moment of pride. Instead, Maddie felt pressure building behind her ribs, like her heart was being wound too tightly. She tried to channel the tension into her work. The ballroom mock-ups were coming together beautifully, warm golds, soft uplighting, custom archways inspired by the original 1907 architecture. Every detail had her fingerprint. Every flourish, a quiet declaration that she belonged in spaces she once felt too small for. But late at night, when the building was empty, her thoughts weren't on lighting angles or florals. They were on Connor. She hadn't seen him in 8 years. She wondered if he still carried that air of easy confidence, if his smile still charmed crowded rooms, if the guilt of abandoning her ever shadowed his perfect posture. Her stomach twisted at the thought. Not because she missed him, but because the wound he left was one she had stitched together slowly, painstakingly, with no thanks to him. One evening, after hours of finalizing renderings, Maddie stood alone in the dim light of her office, staring at a scale model of the plaza ballroom. The tiny chandeliers glimmered faintly. Her hands rested on the table edge, steady but cold. "You're overthinking again." Julian's voice drifted from the doorway. He stepped inside, jacket slung over one arm, the quiet authority he carried easing just a little in her presence. "I'm preparing," she corrected softly. "You're preparing for a building," Julian said, "not for him." She didn't respond. He approached the table, eyes scanning her work. "This is extraordinary. You've elevated the space without erasing the history. That's rare." She almost smiled. "Thanks. But," he added gently, "you're worried." Maddie exhaled. "I don't want him to see me shaken. I don't want him to have any power left." "He doesn't," Julian said. But she wasn't sure. Trauma had a way of convincing you. The threat was still there, long after the danger was gone. Julian paused, his eyes softening. "Maddie, he doesn't get to decide who you are now." She looked at the model again, imagining herself standing in the real ballroom, the lights bright, the cameras everywhere, Connor somewhere in the crowd. The idea made her pulse stutter. What if he recognized Liam's eyes in her? What if Evelyn Hale stepped in again? What if the past swallowed her before she could defend herself? As if sensing her spiraling, Julian tilted his head. "Whatever happens," he said, "you won't face it alone." The words landed deeper than she expected. Warmth stirred in the space between them, quiet but real. Before she could answer, her phone buzzed on the table. A message from an unknown number. "See you at the plaza. We have unfinished business." Her heart slammed painfully. For a terrifying second, she thought it was Connor. But the signature at the bottom told a different story. Evelyn Hale. The room suddenly felt colder. Julian read her expression. "Who is it?" Maddie swallowed. His mother. In that moment, she realized the plaza wouldn't just be a project. It would be a battlefield. And the woman who once destroyed her life was already waiting on the other side of it. Connor Hale prided himself on his ability to stay composed. He had survived brutal market crashes, aggressive board interrogations, and his mother's ruthless standards. But nothing, absolutely nothing, unsettled him the way seeing Maddie's name on that design contract did. For days, he found himself drifting, unfocused, replaying memories he had spent years burying, the sound of her laugh in the cafe, the way she used to tuck her hair behind her ear when she was nervous, the softness in her voice when she once whispered she believed in him. These images came back uninvited, clawing into his conscience like unwelcome ghosts. He told himself it was nothing, that she was just another designer, that she probably didn't even remember him. But that was a lie. Late one night, after Vanessa left his penthouse to attend yet another charity dinner he didn't care about, Connor sat alone at his marble kitchen island. A glass of bourbon rested beside him as he typed her name into a search bar. Madeline Brooks. Dozens of results appeared, articles praising Brooks' atelier, photos of event venues she transformed, interviews highlighting her visionary approach. His stomach tightened as he clicked on a picture of her standing in a finished penthouse suite. She looked different, stronger, radiant, confident in a way that twisted something dark inside him. She wasn't supposed to rise. She wasn't supposed to thrive. She was supposed to disappear. He felt Evelyn's warning echo in his mind. She is not part of our world. But she was now, and the world seemed to love her for it. A strange panic settled in Connor's chest, a fear he didn't recognize. He zoomed in on the photo. Something behind her eyes looked familiar, something he had once cherished but foolishly abandoned. He shut his laptop too hard. Across the city, Evelyn Hale was preparing her own battlefield. She paced her private office at Hale Group, the city lights shimmering behind her like a jeweled curtain. Her assistant waited nervously as Evelyn scanned documents related to the plaza event. "She cannot be involved," Evelyn said sharply. "Remove her." The assistant swallowed. "With respect, Miss Hale, her studio was chosen by the investors. They're impressed with her portfolio. She's highly recommended." Evelyn's eyes narrowed. Recommendations can be undone. If with war. But the contracts. Contracts, Evelyn interrupted, bend when pressure is applied correctly. Her gaze hardened. She had spent her life shaping the Hale empire, brick by brick, sacrifice by sacrifice. She would not allow a woman from the past, some girl her son once toyed with, to jeopardize the pristine future she built. She turned toward the window, voice low and cold. "Find a way. I won't allow her to stand on that stage." The assistant nodded shakily and left. Evelyn allowed herself a long, controlled breath. Maddie had resurfaced, and Evelyn wanted her gone again. Meanwhile, Connor's fixation grew. At the office, he found himself distracted during meetings. Investors noticed. Vanessa complained he wasn't listening. His assistant asked if he was sleeping enough. Every whisper, every side glance grated on him. Why was he so bothered? Why did the thought of seeing Maddie again make him feel like the ground beneath him wasn't stable? He finally admitted it to himself. At least. He was afraid she hated him. Afraid she would expose him. Afraid she knew too much. But what he feared most was that she had forgotten him entirely. Obsession replaced logic. He opened her profile again. Her eyes in the photo stared back at him, not with longing, not with softness, with strength, a strength that terrified him. He muttered into the quiet penthouse, "Maddie, what do you want from me now?" But the truth was brutal. She didn't want anything from him. Yet fate was about to give her everything he feared losing. And Evelyn Hale, the very woman who had buried Maddie before, was already sharpening her knives. The morning sun poured through Maddie's apartment like a soft spotlight, warming the hardwood floors and brushing against the edges of her carefully organized studio space. Usually, mornings brought calm coffee brewing, The quiet tap of Liam's footsteps, the soft rustle of design sketches scattered across her desk. But today felt different. Today felt like the beginning of something she couldn't quite name. She stared at her reflection in the bathroom mirror. Bare face. Faded t-shirt. Sleepless eyes. Not fear, no. Something deeper rested beneath her ribs. Anticipation mixed with the quiet tremor of a woman preparing to confront the ghost who once ruined her life. She tied her hair into a loose bun, studying herself. 8 years had sculpted her into someone sharper, steadier, far more capable than the trembling girl Connor had discarded. But trauma still had a way of whispering lies. He still has power over you. You're still that girl he abandoned. You're not ready. She splashed cold water on her face, breathing slowly. Then she said aloud, I am not her anymore. A soft knock sounded on the doorframe. Mom? Liam stood there, backpack slung over one shoulder. You look serious. She laughed gently. Do I? Yeah, like when you're about to yell at a supplier for messing up your samples. She ruffled his hair. Maybe I'm just gearing up for a big day. If you do for... Liam handed her a little drawing, a sketch of her standing in front of tall buildings, holding blueprints, with a giant gold crown floating above her head. You're the best designer ever, he said. You're gonna knock it out of the park. Her throat tightened. Thank you, sweetheart. After dropping him off at school, she headed to Mercer Tower. Julian had insisted she come early to finalize the presentation for Hailtech's board approval. But when she arrived, she found not Julian, not yet, but a garment bag hanging from her office door. A note rested on top. Maddie, you've spent years helping others see their potential. Today, let me help you see yours. J.M. Inside was a simple but stunning black jumpsuit, tailored, modern, powerful. The kind of garment that didn't beg for attention, but commanded it. She hesitated. This wasn't a gown or a dramatic transformation, but it was a statement, a reclamation. She put it on. The woman staring back at her in the mirror looked like she belonged in the boardrooms she once cleaned as a janitor during her college nights. Strong shoulders, clean lines, quiet authority. Julian appeared in the doorway, pausing as he took her in. Well, he said softly, if Connor Hale thought he knew who he blocked 8 years ago, he's about to get a very rude awakening. She flushed, shaking her head. It's just clothes. No, Julian said. It's armor. And Ducad. He handed her a slim folder. Here's your talking points for the investor walkthrough. You'll lead the first half. I'll jump in after. Maddie blinked. Me? Lead? You've designed the entire vision. They need to hear it from you. Her heart thudded. Julian, this is the Hale Group. Evelyn will be there. And? Julian lifted a brow. You think she intimidates me? Maddie let out a shaky breath. She terrifies me. Julian's gaze softened. Then let me be blunt. Evelyn Hale fears only one thing, what she cannot control. And she cannot control you. His words settled over her like a cloak. As they walked into the conference room, her heels clicking confidently across the marble, Maddie felt something shift inside her. Finally, the faint but undeniable spark of a woman stepping out of survival and into power. The doors opened. Evelyn Hale stood inside, their eyes locked. And in that charged, airless moment, Maddie understood. This wasn't just a presentation. It was the opening strike of a war she never asked for, but was finally ready to win. The conference room inside Mercer Tower wasn't built for mercy. Its glass walls reflected every face, every hesitation, every weakness. Sunlight streamed across the long marble table, illuminating the room with an almost theatrical brightness fitting, considering the drama about to unfold. Maddie stepped inside, Julian slightly behind her, steady and composed like a silent fortress. Evelyn Hale stood at the far end, spine straight, lips pressed into a poised, efficient line. But she wasn't the first one Maddie noticed. Connor was. He sat near the center of the table, suit immaculate, hair perfectly styled, but his face cracked for a split second the moment he saw her. The breath left his body. His eyes widened, confusion crashing into recognition collapsing into something much darker, dread. It was subtle, but Maddie saw it. And Evelyn did too. Her gaze snapped to Connor, sharp as a blade. Maddie forced herself to breathe evenly. This wasn't the trembling girl he abandoned. This was a woman in tailored armor, standing on her own battlefield. Good morning, Julian began, his voice calm. Thank you all for being here to review Brooks Atelier's design direction for the merger event at the plaza. But the room wasn't looking at Julian. Every pair of eyes flicked between Maddie and Connor, two stories colliding in real time. Connor stood abruptly, knocking his pen off the table. Madeline? His voice cracked slightly. You're the designer? Maddie's posture didn't budge. Yes, I'm leading the project. If you ever's. The professionalism in her tone, the steadiness, it shook him more than anger ever could. He took a slow step toward her, searching her face for softness, familiarity, anything that resembled the girl he left behind. But the woman before him was unrecognizable, polished, confident, powerful. You look, Connor struggled, different. Maddie offered a gentle smile, the kind used for difficult clients, not lost lovers. People change. Evelyn's voice sliced into the tension. Connor, sit down. End quote. But Connor didn't move. His eyes were fixed on Maddie, questions rising behind them like a storm. 8 years of silence cracking open. Julian stepped slightly forward, placing himself between them with calculated ease, a subtle message Connor wasn't too dense to miss. Madeline, Connor said again, softer this time. Could we speak after this, privately? Julian answered before Maddie could. She's here to present, not entertain personal conversations. If you does know. Evelyn's gaze darted between Julian and Maddie, suspicion narrowing her eyes. Let's proceed, she said coolly. Maddie placed her materials on the table, her hands steady despite the tremor in her chest. As she spoke about lighting structures, architectural preservation, spatial flow, her voice grew stronger. Her words filled the room, commanding attention in a way that made even Evelyn tilt her head. Connor barely blinked through the entire presentation. He watched Maddie like he was watching a life he'd thrown away take shape into something he could no longer touch. When she finished, the room erupted in praise. Investors leaned forward, intrigued. Evelyn forced a smile that didn't reach her eyes. But Connor, he stood again. Maddie, he said quietly, I owe you an apology. The room froze. Julian's jaw tightened. Evelyn's face blanched. Maddie kept her expression neutral, but her pulse pounded in her throat. 8 years too late. 8 years too painful. This isn't the time, Julian said sharply. But Connor shook his head. It's long overdue. Maddie exhaled slowly. Mr. Hale, she said, her voice calm but iced with distance. This meeting is about the merger, nothing else. The use of Mr. Hale hit him harder than any insult. He swallowed, stunned. Evelyn stood abruptly. This meeting is adjourned. One by one, people gathered their folders and left. Maddie turned to leave, but Connor stepped into her path. Maddie, please, just hear me out. Julian moved instantly, placing a firm hand on Connor's shoulder. She said no. Connor's eyes flickered not with anger, but something far more desperate. Maddie, why are you doing this? He whispered. She met his gaze with unwavering calm. I'm not doing anything, Connor. Her voice softened, painfully honest. I simply don't know you anymore. She walked past him, but Connor couldn't move, because in that moment, he realized. The woman he left behind was gone, and the woman standing before him might be the one thing powerful enough to destroy him. Connor Hale had survived hostile takeovers, federal audits, and the wrath of his mother. But nothing unnerved him like the way Maddie looked at him today, calm, composed, utterly unaffected. It was as if the years he spent pretending she never existed had backfired, collapsing into a void he could no longer escape. Back in his penthouse, he paced the living room, bourbon untouched on the table. His reflection stared back at him through the floor-to-ceiling windows, perfect suit, perfect jawline, perfect life, except none of it felt solid anymore. It all felt borrowed. Maddie, he whispered, tasting the name for the first time in years. It tasted like regret. Every memory he had fought so hard to bury surged up her laugh against his chest, her sketches scattered on her bed, the softness in her voice when she once told him she felt safe with him. Safe. He had destroyed that. And now she stood taller than he ever imagined. A buzz from his phone jolted him. It was Evelyn. Come to my office, now. Minutes later, he entered the executive suite of Hale Group, greeted by the sterile scent of glass cleaner and Evelyn's icy presence. She didn't look up from her desk. What was that today? She asked sharply. Connor hesitated. Didn't expect to see her. Clearly, she snapped. You behaved like a teenager seeing his prom date with another boy. He clenched his jaw. It wasn't like that. Then what was it? Evelyn's voice cut like a blade. You have spent years crafting an image I can defend. You do not get to sabotage it because a girl you once entertained has reappeared. Thanks for watching. That word girl made something ignite inside him. She wasn't just a girl. Evelyn slowly lifted her head, her expression turning lethal. Do you still not understand what is at risk? The Carrington merger depends on your stability. Your future as CEO depends on precision. Emotion is a liability, and Madeline Brooks is a landmine. She's not. She is, Evelyn said, rising to her feet, and I will not allow her to damage what we built. Connor felt a chill ripple down his spine. What are you planning? Containment. There was no softness in her tone. I warned you years ago she would be a threat. I handled the problem once. I will handle it again. Connor stiffened. What do you mean, handled? Evelyn waved her hand dismissively. Your mind was on other things. I simply ensured she vanished. His stomach twisted. You got her fired? And blacklisted, Evelyn said without remorse. It was necessary. A sickening wave washed through him. So, what now? He asked quietly. Evelyn stepped closer. You will stay away from her. You will act professionally, and you will not, under any circumstances, let that woman think she has power over you. But she did. And Evelyn knew it. Meanwhile, across the city, Maddie walked into her Brooklyn apartment carrying groceries, only to find Julian in the kitchen helping Liam with a school project. For a moment, warmth washed over her, this small glimpse of a life she had never dared to imagine. You okay? Julian asked once. Liam ran to his room. Yes, she lied. Just, today was intense. Julian studied her. Connor? She nodded. And Evelyn? Julian's expression hardened. You need to be careful with her. Evelyn Hale doesn't fight fair. Maddie leaned against the counter, finally letting her guard drop for a second. I'm not afraid of Connor anymore. It's her. Julian stepped closer. Then we'll face her together. Those words steadied her like an anchor. But when she checked her phone, a new message appeared, one that made her blood run cold. Miss Brooks, a formal complaint has been filed against your studio. Immediate review required. City Licensing Board. Julian looked at her screen, jaw tightening. Evelyn has made her first move, he said. And Maddie suddenly understood. This wasn't personal revenge. This was a war Evelyn intended to win, no matter who she had to destroy. The letter from the City Licensing Board sat on Maddie's desk like a verdict waiting to be read aloud. Formal complaint. Violations under review. Potential suspension. Words meant to cripple a small studio, words Evelyn Hale had weaponized without hesitation. Her staff tried to hide their panic, but Maddie felt it in the tightness of the room, the whispered conversations, the stolen glances toward her closed office door. She sat alone, pressing her palms against her temples, trying to steady her breathing. Brooks Atelier wasn't just a business. It was her second chance. Her livelihood. Liam's future. Julian arrived within minutes of her call, his presence filling the doorway like a warm shield. Let me guess, he said, voice low. They won't tell you who filed it. Maddie nodded. Anonymous complainant, but we both know who. Julian's jaw flexed. Evelyn didn't even wait 24 hours. They experience. She's targeting my livelihood, Julian. Maddie's voice cracked before she could stop it. What if the licensing board shuts us down? What if Liam? Julian took her hands. Breathe. They won't shut you down. You run one of the cleanest studios in Manhattan. She's trying to scare you. But it's working, she whispered. Across town, in the mirrored halls of Hale Group, Connor sat in his office, staring at his computer screen, unable to focus. His mind kept replaying the meeting, the look in Maddie's eyes, a mixture of calm and distance that cut deeper than anger ever could. His assistant stepped inside cautiously. Mr. Hale, Miss Hale has instructed me to forward you a file. Connor frowned. What file? The assistant placed a folder in front of him. Inside were documents listing the formal complaint against Brooks Atelier. His stomach dropped. Mother filed this? He asked quietly. I shouldn't say, the assistant murmured, eyes avoiding his. But she didn't need to. The answer was written all over the papers. Connor leaned back in his chair, guilt twisting through him like a blade. "This is wrong." The assistant hesitated. "Sir, I've been with the company a long time. Your mother has done worse." He looked up sharply. "What?" She swallowed, suddenly pale. "Never mind, I should go." But Connor's heart was already pounding. Worse? Worse than sabotaging a young woman's entire career? Worse than ruining someone he once claimed to love? Something inside him began to fracture. Meanwhile, Maddie entered her studio floor, putting on a mask of strength for her team. She gathered everyone together. "Listen," she began. "We've been hit with a false complaint, but we will handle it with transparency and professionalism. No one is losing their job. No one is shutting down anything. We will get through this. It's not Russ." Her words steadied the room, but inside, she felt like a dam about to burst. When the team returned to work, Julian pulled her aside. "You need protection. Legal, financial, and personal." "I can't fight Evelyn Hale," Maddie whispered. "She controls half the city." Julian met her eyes. "Good thing you're not fighting alone." In another part of Manhattan, Connor confronted his mother. "You filed a complaint against her studio," he said flatly. Evelyn didn't look up from her laptop. "Of course I did." "You can't do that. It's unethical." "It's necessary," she corrected, finally meeting his gaze. "You are unstable around her. That threatens the merger. That threatens our entire legacy. She hasn't done anything wrong. That's irrelevant." Evelyn's voice chilled the room. "She existed, and she resurfaced. That alone is a problem." Connor felt something heavy crack inside him. "Mother, what else did you do 8 years ago? I need the truth." "I guessed him." Evelyn's face remained unreadable. "The truth is irrelevant now." "No," Connor said quietly, "it's not." He walked out before she could stop him, the weight of years of lies pressing down on him like the skyline outside. Back in her studio, Maddie's phone buzzed. Unknown number. Again. This time, a single sentence appeared. "If you think this complaint is the end, you have no idea what's coming." Julian read over her shoulder. His expression darkened. "She wants a war?" Maddie swallowed hard. "She just declared one. It happened on a Thursday afternoon, the kind of day Maddie usually cherished, sunlight slanting through her studio windows, her team buzzing with activity, Liam's laughter echoing faintly from her office, where he did homework after school. For a moment, it felt like life was settling again, even with Evelyn's threats circling like vultures overhead. But peace never lasted long in a war. Maddie was reviewing floral arrangements for the plaza when her assistant poked her head into the meeting room. "Maddie, there's a delivery issue downstairs. They need your signature." She sighed, stood, and headed to the lobby, completely unaware that fate had chosen this exact moment to pull a thread she'd been desperately trying to keep hidden. Across the city, Connor had stormed out of a tense meeting with auditors, stressed, restless, and unable to focus. He wandered through Manhattan without direction until he found himself outside Mercer Tower. He wasn't planning to go in, he just wanted to clear his head. But then he saw a little boy step out of a rideshare with a backpack slung over one shoulder. A boy with soft brown hair. A boy with familiar eyes, deep, thoughtful, quietly observant. He looked 8. Connor froze. The child's driver waved as the boy thanked him politely and hurried toward the revolving doors. Connor's heart thudded. Something about him felt like déjà vu, sharp and unsettling. "Hey there," the building's doorman greeted. "Back again to see your mom?" "Mom." Connor's pulse jumped. His feet moved before his mind could catch up. "Excuse me," he called out. The boy turned, and the world tilted. Those eyes, God, those eyes. He had seen them before. In late-night conversations. In laughter shared on a Brooklyn rooftop. In the mirror, every morning of his life. The boy blinked up at him. "Hi, 18. Connor's throat tightened. "What's your name?" "Liam," the boy said cheerfully. "My mom works upstairs." A breath escaped Connor's lungs like he'd been punched. The timeline, the age, the face. "Liam." His voice shook when he spoke again. "Your mom. What's her name?" "Madeline Brooks," Liam answered without hesitation. Connor's vision blurred for a moment. Everything around him, cars, voices, the city's roar, fell away. Liam. Madeline. 8 years. Impossible. But completely, devastatingly possible. Before he could speak again, Julian appeared behind the glass doors, his expression shifting instantly from confusion to ice-cold clarity. He stepped between them with the effortless authority of a man defending what mattered. "Liam," Julian said calmly, "your mom is waiting." The boy nodded. "Okay, Mr. Mercer." Connor's stomach twisted. Mr. Mercer? What was Julian to Maddie? To Liam? Julian met Connor's eyes with a stare that held no warmth. "Step back." Connor swallowed hard. "Is he?" "Not your concern," Julian cut in. "Not anymore." The doors closed behind them, leaving Connor standing on the sidewalk with shaking hands and 1,000 shards of truth slicing into him. Meanwhile, upstairs, Maddie was signing off a delivery slip when Liam ran toward her. "Mom," he said breathlessly, "I saw someone downstairs." He looked confused. Her heart stuttered. "Who?" Before Liam could answer, Julian stepped into the hallway. "Maddie," he said quietly, "we have a problem." Her blood went cold. "What happened?" Julian hesitated. Connor saw Liam. Time stopped. Her hands trembled, the pen falling to the floor. "No, Julian. He can't know." Julian stepped toward her. "He doesn't know, not fully, but he suspects." As if the universe delighted in cruelty, her phone buzzed. A new message. "Unknown number. You should have stayed gone. I won't allow this child to interfere with our legacy. As mother-in-law, Evelyn Hale." Maddie's knees nearly buckled. Julian caught her by the elbow. "She's escalating." Tears welled in her eyes, not from fear, but from fury. "They're not taking my son," she whispered. Julian's voice hardened. "Then it's time to stop reacting and start fighting back." The Plaza Hotel stood like a golden monument against the Manhattan skyline, its marble pillars and shimmering lights promising elegance, influence, and danger. The merger gala was only 3 days away, and the city buzzed with anticipation. Investors, politicians, journalists, everyone who mattered would be there. And Evelyn Hale planned to turn it into Maddie's downfall. Inside her penthouse office, Evelyn met with Arthur Carrington, her future in-law, and a man equally ruthless. Photos, documents, and financial printouts were spread across the table. "She's become a liability," Evelyn said. Her voice was cool, precise. "We must ensure she's removed before the gala." Arthur tapped a finger against the photos, a mixture of Maddie, her studio, and shockingly, Liam. "The boy resembles Connor." Evelyn did not flinch. "Which is precisely why this is dangerous." "And your plan?" he asked. She slid a folder toward him. Inside were falsified reports, altered contracts, and a strategically curated accusation file against Brooks Atelier crafted to break a small business in a single blow. Arthur nodded, satisfied. "The board will believe anything we present." "They always do," Evelyn replied with a thin smile. "By the time the gala begins, she won't set foot inside the building." Across the river in Brooklyn, Maddie sat at her kitchen table, staring at the message Evelyn had sent, her fingers curled into fists. She'd survived poverty, heartbreak, and every obstacle Manhattan had thrown her way, but this was different. Evelyn was threatening her child. Julian arrived moments later, letting himself in with the familiarity of someone woven into her life. Liam rushed to greet him, and Julian ruffled his hair before turning to Maddie. "You look like you haven't slept," he said softly. "I haven't," Maddie admitted. "She won't stop. She'll go after anything I love, anyone." Julian pulled out a folder. "I've hired a legal team, one of the best in New York, and we're filing for protection, business, and personal." Maddie swallowed. "Julian, this could become extremely public." "Let it," he said calmly. "Evelyn's empire is built on fear, yours is built on truth." His confidence steadied her, but inside, a storm raged. She looked toward Liam's room, where he hummed quietly while drawing superheroes. Julian touched her elbow. "You're not alone in this. You haven't been for a long time." Her breath caught not from fear, but from something warmer, something she hadn't let herself feel in years. But downtown, Connor Hale was unraveling. He sat in his office, replaying the moment he saw Liam, those eyes, that smile, that unmistakable connection. His hands trembled as he dialed Evelyn. "Mother," he said, voice strained. "We need to talk about the boy." Evelyn didn't hesitate. "Irrelevant. He looks like me. Coincidence." "You lied to me," he whispered. "All these years, you lied." Evelyn's voice sharpened. "Whatever that boy is or isn't does not matter. What matters is preserving our family legacy. Do you understand? But Connor didn't. For the first time, he truly didn't. He hung up, staring into empty space, realization settling like lead in his chest. Meanwhile, Maddie arrived at the plaza for a final walkthrough with Julian. The ballroom was a cathedral of golden light, her designs reflected in every curve, every shimmer, every detail. It was the culmination of her talent, her proof that she belonged among the elite who once ignored her. But as she walked beneath the crystal chandeliers, she felt a chill. Evelyn Hale stood at the opposite doorway, hands clasped, eyes cold, a faint, victorious smile on her lips. Their gazes locked across the room, tension crackling like electricity. Maddie didn't flinch. Not anymore. Evelyn stepped forward, heels echoing sharply on the marble floor. "Enjoy the room while you can," she murmured. "You won't be standing in it the night of the gala." Maddie exhaled slowly. "You can't intimidate me." Evelyn's smile widened. "My dear, I haven't even started." For the first time since their war began, Maddie didn't feel fear. She felt anger, righteous, controlled, powerful. She whispered back, "Neither have I." The night of the Plaza Gala arrived draped in gold. Manhattan shimmered beneath a velvet sky, each window glowing like a jewel. Black cars lined Fifth Avenue, spilling out investors, dignitaries, and society figures dressed in their finest. Paparazzi flashes lit the air like electric rain. Inside her Brooklyn apartment, Maddie stood before her mirror, breath held still. She looked nothing like the girl Connor once abandoned. Her jumpsuit from earlier in the week had been replaced with a gown, simple, elegant, unmistakably powerful. Deep emerald satin swept over her frame, the color catching the light like polished stone. Her hair was pinned loosely, soft waves framing a face sharpened by resolve. She wasn't dressing to impress Connor. She wasn't dressing to intimidate Evelyn. She was dressing for herself, for the woman she had fought to become. Liam stood beside her, eyes wide. "Mom, you look like a real-life queen." Emotion tightened Maddie's throat. "Thank you, sweetheart." End quote. Julian arrived moments later, wearing a classic black tuxedo that made the room feel 10 degrees smaller. His eyes softened when he saw her. "Maddie," he murmured, "you look extraordinary." A blush warmed her cheeks. "You clean up pretty well yourself." He smiled, a quiet, knowing thing. "Ready?" She nodded, but her pulse skittered nervously. Julian extended his arm. "Whatever happens tonight, you walk beside me. No fear. No hesitation. If friends would do matter of." With one final glance at Liam safe with his babysitter, smiling proudly, Maddie stepped into the waiting Mercedes. As they drove through Manhattan, the city glittered around them. Billboards flashed, towers glowed, and in every reflection, Maddie saw a woman she barely recognized but admired. Meanwhile, inside the plaza's ballroom, Connor stood near the entrance, hands clasped behind his back. He had barely slept in days. Every thought returned to Liam, his age, his face, the eerie resemblance Connor couldn't explain away. Tonight was supposed to secure his future. Instead, it felt like standing on the edge of collapse. Vanessa approached, placing a manicured hand on his arm. "You look tense." "I'm fine," Connor lied. But his eyes kept drifting to the doors, waiting. Then Evelyn appeared in a sleek silver gown, her expression sharp as crystal. "Control yourself tonight," she said. He clenched his jaw. "Mother, no distractions," she cut in. "I expect perfection." For the first time in his life, Connor wanted to defy her. The doors opened. The room seemed to inhale. Maddie entered on Julian's arm, emerald gown catching every glimmer of chandelier light. Heads turned. Conversations paused. Even the orchestra seemed to falter. Connor forgot to breathe. He watched her move with a confidence he had never possessed, a quiet, magnetic grace that made even the wealthiest women in the room feel suddenly flat, ordinary. Evelyn's face darkened. "Unacceptable," she hissed under her breath. But Maddie didn't see her, not at first. Her eyes scanned the ballroom, cataloging every design detail she had poured her heart into. Pride flickered in them, soft but undeniable. Then her gaze met Connor's. A collision. A storm. A history unfolding in a single heartbeat. Connor stepped forward, desperation rising. "Maddie," Julian smoothly intercepted, shaking his head. "Not here." Connor's eyes dropped to Julian's hand, resting protectively at her back. "So he's the man in her life now," he murmured. Jealousy spiked through him, irrational and sharp. Evelyn, watching from a distance, saw the shift. And she smiled. Not kindly, but like a woman who had already set fire to the chessboard. The lights dimmed. The announcer's voice echoed. "Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Hale-Tech-Carrington merger celebration." Maddie felt the room tighten around her. This night wasn't just a celebration. It was a trap one Evelyn Hale had spent years perfecting. The orchestra faded into a soft hum as the gala reached its peak. Champagne glasses clinked beneath the golden chandeliers, investors murmured with excitement, and cameras flashed like distant lightning. The room pulsed with anticipation. Every powerful figure in Manhattan gathered under one roof, unaware they were standing on a fault line inches from rupture. And Evelyn Hale was ready to trigger the quake. She watched Maddie from across the ballroom, her expression sharpened into something predatory. Standing beside Arthur Carrington, she whispered instructions the way a general directs troops before a final assault. "It happens the moment she steps forward," Evelyn murmured. Arthur nodded. "This will destroy her credibility." Connor overheard, and something inside him twisted violently. "What are you talking about?" he demanded. Evelyn dismissed him with a cold flick of her hand. "Not now, Connor." But he stepped closer, lowering his voice. "If you're planning something against Maddie, against her studio," Evelyn corrected. A necessary distinction. Connor felt his heart hammer. "Mother, stop, please." But Evelyn had never listened to pleas, not from him, not from anyone. Across the room, Julian guided Maddie toward the event stage for the design acknowledgement segment. Her palms were slightly damp, but her posture was unshakably composed. She had earned this moment. Every detail of the ballroom was her creation, her vision made real. Julian squeezed her arm. "Remember, you belong here." Before she could answer, the announcer boomed. "Please welcome Madeline Brooks of Brooks Atelier, the visionary behind tonight's transformation of the Plaza Ballroom." End quote. Applause burst through the room. Maddie inhaled deeply and stepped forward. That's when Evelyn struck. A man from the Carrington legal team suddenly approached the microphone, raising a folder dramatically. "Before Miss Brooks speaks," he announced, "there is an urgent matter of integrity and public trust." Maddie froze mid-step. Julian's expression darkened instantly. Connor's stomach dropped. The man continued, "We have received documentation indicating that Brooks Atelier is currently under investigation by the City Licensing Board for violations and potential ethical misconduct." A wave of gasps rippled across the ballroom. Flashes exploded. Photographers, sensing blood in the water. Maddie's breath vanished. Her hands trembled as whispers cut the room like knives. Violations? How unprofessional. I knew she rose too fast. Evelyn watched with quiet satisfaction. Julian stepped forward. "This is inappropriate and defamatory. Those allegations are unverified." But the man cut him off. "We cannot celebrate a designer whose business may be in violation of city regulations. For the integrity of Hale-Tech and the Carrington merger, we must address this immediately." Connor felt physically ill. "Mother," he hissed, "what have you done?" Evelyn didn't take her eyes off Maddie. What was necessary? Maddie stood frozen, her heartbeat roaring in her ears. The chandeliers blurred, the room tilted. Every whisper felt like a nail hammered into her spine. Julian stepped beside her, voice steady but furious. "You do not speak another word about Miss Brooks without legal proof. She has run her studio with integrity, more than I can say for some people in this room." The jab landed hard. Connor flinched. But before the moment could shift, Evelyn glided toward Maddie, smile cold and poisonous. "You should have stayed quiet," Evelyn whispered, just loud enough for the nearby guests to hear. "Ambition is dangerous for people like you." Something in Maddie snapped. Her fear evaporated under a surge of anger. "Sharp, clean, righteous. People like me?" Maddie repeated softly. "You mean people who aren't born into privilege? People who build instead of manipulate?" Gasps filled the ballroom again. Evelyn's eyes narrowed. "Choose your words carefully." "No," Maddie said, voice gaining power. "For 8 years you've done everything to make me disappear. But I'm still here, and I will not let you threaten my son." Connor jerked his head up. "Son?" Silence swallowed the room. Every head turned. Maddie froze. Julian's hand tightened at her back. Evelyn's face turned white with fury. Connor whispered again, voice trembling. "Maddie, you have a son?" Her lips parted, but no sound came out. Because the truth had detonated in the center of the plaza ballroom. And nothing, not the gala, not the merger, not Evelyn's power, would ever be the same again. The ballroom fell into a suffocating silence so complete, so absolute that even the chandeliers seemed to stop shimmering. The word son still hung in the air, suspended like a blade. Connor stood frozen, pale, eyes wide, as if someone had carved open his entire past and laid it bare for the world to see. "Son?" he repeated, voice cracking in a way no one in Manhattan had ever heard from him. "Maddie, you have a son?" Maddie could barely breathe. She felt her chest constrict, panic rising like floodwater. This was the moment she feared more than any legal threat, any sabotage Evelyn could conjure. The truth was no longer hers. To control it was out, exposed, vulnerable beneath the merciless lights of the plaza. Julian stepped between them, protective. "This isn't the place. If Whiteout..." But Connor shoved forward, desperation overriding sense. "Tell me, Maddie," his voice quivered. "Is he mine?" There it was. The question. The door. The wound. Gasps echoed through the ballroom. Phones lifted, cameras zoomed, power brokers leaned in, smelling scandal like wolves scenting blood. Maddie swallowed hard. Her voice barely formed. Connor, not here. But Connor had never been more present in his life. All his composure, all his training crumbled. "My God," he whispered. 8 years. "Maddie, why didn't you?" "Because you blocked me." The words tore out of her, raw and uncontrolled. "You erased me the moment I needed you." Connor staggered back as though struck. "I what? No, that's not." But then he faltered, memory slicing through him. His mother's voice. The fear, the command, the choice he made. It all came crashing down. Evelyn moved fast. "Enough," she snapped, stepping between them like a shield of ice. "This conversation ends now." And 24. But Connor rounded on her. "Did you know?" Evelyn didn't blink. "Your personal life is irrelevant." "Did you know?" He demanded again, louder. Her silence answered for her. Connor recoiled. Betrayal washed through him with such force he had to grip the table. "You kept my child from me?" "She kept herself pregnant," Evelyn snapped, cold and venomous. "And I protected you." Maddie inhaled sharply. Julian stepped forward, fury igniting in his eyes. "You ruined her life, Evelyn." "Because of..." Evelyn laughed lightly. "I prevented a scandal." "For your benefit," Julian said, "not his." Connor shook his head slowly, disbelief twisting his features. "Mother, how could you? How could I?" Evelyn stepped closer, her voice rising. "How could you be so careless? You were weeks from your promotion, your future. Should I have let her drag you down?" Maddie flinched as if slapped. Connor stared at his mother as though he'd never seen her before. "You destroyed everything. You destroyed her. You destroyed my chance to..." "To what?" Evelyn hissed. "Raise a child with a waitress who would have bled you dry? Don't be naive, Connor." Maddie's fists trembled. Julian stepped in, voice low but lethal. "Watch your words." But Evelyn continued, relentless. "Madeline Brooks is nothing. A mistake. One I corrected. That did it." Maddie's breath steadied. She finally spoke, not trembling, not afraid. "You didn't correct anything," she said quietly. "You created the man who abandoned me. You created the boy who had to grow up without a father. You created this mess." Connor's eyes filled with tears. "Maddie," he whispered, "is Liam mine?" Her heart clenched. She had always imagined she'd choose the moment to tell him, not like this, not in a room full of vultures waiting for her to bleed. She closed her eyes, then nodded. The room erupted, gasps, shouts, camera flashes. Connor collapsed into a chair, face drained. "I have a son." Evelyn slammed her hand on the table. "No, this changes nothing. You will not acknowledge that child." He looked at her with utter disgust. "You don't decide that anymore." Maddie felt tears burn behind her eyes, not from heartbreak, but from the realization that everything was spiraling too fast. Julian touched her shoulder. "We need to leave, now." But as they turned to go, Evelyn spoke again, soft, chilling, final. "This isn't over, Madeline. You've just destroyed your future." Maddie turned back, voice steady with a strength Evelyn never anticipated. "No," she said, "I'm reclaiming it." The ballroom had become a battlefield, every chandelier flickering like torches above a crowd hungry for scandal. The revelation of Liam's existence rippled through the guests in relentless waves. Investors whispered behind raised hands. Journalists typed furiously into their phones. The entire Haletech-Carrington merger now hung by a thread thinner than glass. And at the center of the chaos, Connor Hale was falling apart. He staggered to his feet, breathing unevenly, hands trembling so visibly even the orchestra faltered mid-note. "I have a son," he said softly, the words barely forming. 8 years, I never knew." His voice cracked raw, broken, stripped of all corporate polish. A few guests looked away, uncomfortable, witnessing the unraveling of a man once groomed as Manhattan's next financial titan. Evelyn's reaction was the opposite. "Enough," she snapped, stepping toward him. "You will not show weakness in public." Connor stared at her, disbelief twisting his features. "Weakness? You kept my child from me. You weren't ready. You didn't let me decide." Evelyn's face hardened to stone. "I decided for both of you, as I always have. And in 59. The room buzzed, shocked, murmurs spreading like wildfire. This was no longer just about Maddie. This was about the Hale empire, revealing cracks no merger could hide. Arthur Carrington stepped forward, voice low but deadly. "Evelyn, if this gets out, our shareholders will." "This will not get out," Evelyn snarled. But it already had. Cameras were rolling, journalists were texting, the story was writing itself. Meanwhile, Julian guided Maddie toward the side entrance, shielding her from the crowd's predatory curiosity. She kept her chin high, but inside she was shaking. Not from guilt, she owed none of that to anyone, but from the intensity of the moment. "Are you okay?" Julian whispered. She nodded, though her heart pounded painfully. "It had to break sometime." "You didn't break anything," Julian said. "Evelyn did. Connor did." She clenched her jaw. "And they're not done yet. It's no-do." Behind them, Connor pushed past Evelyn and followed. "Maddie, wait!" He called, voice hoarse, desperate. She stopped. She didn't turn, but she stopped. The entire ballroom froze with her. "Maddie," Connor said again, breathless. "Please, don't leave, not like this." Julian stepped between them instantly. "Tonight is not the time." Connor ignored him. His eyes were fixed on Maddie, pleading. "I didn't know. If I had known, I would have." Maddie turned, meeting his gaze with a calm that cut deeper than any outburst. "Don't rewrite history, Connor. You blocked me. You chose to disappear." His expression crumbled. "My mother told me." "I don't care what she told you," Maddie said. "You were a grown man. You made your choice." A murmur of agreement rippled through the crowd finally, sympathy tilting toward her. But Evelyn wasn't done. "Madeline Brooks," she said loudly, stepping forward with a predatory smile. "You have jeopardized our merger, humiliated my son, and attempted to manipulate this event for personal gain. Your studio will face consequences." Julian laughed a low, dangerous sound. "You're losing control, Evelyn." Evelyn's gaze sharpened. "You think I can't destroy her business?" Julian stepped forward, narrowing the distance between them. "You've tried. And yet, she's still standing." "I would broke it." Guests watched, enthralled. This wasn't a gala anymore. It was a reckoning. Connor looked between them, his mother, the tyrant who shaped him. Maddie, the woman he wronged. Julian, a man who stood where he should have. For the first time, Connor saw the truth clearly. "Mother," he said, voice trembling, "you've been controlling my entire life. Guiding you." She corrected. "Destroying everything real," Connor whispered. "Everything good." Evelyn's jaw tightened. "Weakness is unbecoming of a Hale." Connor shook his head. "Maybe that's why this family keeps breaking." Gasps scattered through the ballroom, and in that moment Maddie realized something. This wasn't just Connor's downfall. This was Evelyn's too. She turned to Julian and whispered, "It's time." He nodded. "You're ready." Maddie stepped forward again, not toward Connor, not toward Evelyn, but toward the center of the room. The crowd parted. She lifted her chin, and with the entire ballroom watching, she prepared to drop the twist neither the Hales nor Manhattan saw coming. The crowd held its breath as Maddie stepped back into the center of the ballroom. No trembling, no shame. Only a steady calm that unnerved Evelyn and stunned Connor. The tension snapped through the air like electricity, and even the chandeliers seemed to dim in anticipation. Maddie's voice was soft but carried effortlessly. "I've stayed silent for 8 years. Tonight, I won't. Becomes des. W action. Every head turned. Julian moved beside her, not overshadowing, not leading, simply standing as the anchor she had never had before. Evelyn scoffed loudly. This is not your moment, Miss Brooks. Security will escort you out if— No, Maddie said, cutting her off. This is exactly my moment. A ripple of shock moved through the audience. Maddie lifted a folder thin, precise. Before you try to destroy my career, Evelyn, you should know. You already tried. Evelyn stiffened. Connor's eyes widened. Julian folded his arms, bracing for impact. Maddie opened the folder and held up a document. This, she said clearly, is a statement from the design firm that fired me 8 years ago. They confirmed they received pressure from the Hale Group to terminate me. Pressure tied directly to my relationship with your son. Whispers shot through the room. Evelyn's lips thinned. Fabricated, desperate. Maddie continued unfazed, pulling out printouts. And this is email evidence from a former Hale Tech employee now under legal protection, detailing how you attempted to blacklist me across multiple firms in Manhattan. Evelyn's breath hitched. Connor looked physically sick. And this, Maddie said, raising her voice slightly, is proof that the current complaint against my studio was filed anonymously using a Hale Tech-owned IP address. Gasps. Journalists surged closer. Investors whispered furiously. Evelyn snapped, "You have nothing." "Oh, I have everything," Maddie said, locking eyes with her. "Because for once, you attacked the wrong woman." Julian stepped forward, adding weight to her words. Brooks Atelier operates with more integrity than Hale Tech has shown in years. Evelyn Hale knowingly manipulated public offices, sabotaged businesses, and concealed a child's existence for corporate gain. Arthur Carrington paled. "Evelyn, is this true?" She didn't answer. She couldn't. Connor stepped forward slowly, heartbreak shadowing his face. "Mother, tell me you didn't do all this." Evelyn's expression flickered anger, desperation, denial. "Everything I did was to protect you." "You didn't protect me," Connor said. His voice cracked. "You controlled me." Maddie's eyes softened not for him, but for the truth he was finally forced to face. Julian addressed the room. "We have copies of every document, and we intend to file formal charges first thing tomorrow." And as agreed, the investors exploded in outrage. "This merger is a liability. Hale Tech will collapse under scandal. We need legal counsel immediately." Evelyn's composure shattered. "Enough. None of you would be here without me." But the room had already turned. For the first time in her life, Evelyn Hale had lost control, and everyone could see it. Connor looked at Maddie again, eyes brimming with regret. "Maddie, I didn't know. I swear I didn't know." "Thank you for watching." "I believe you didn't know," she said quietly, "but you didn't ask. You didn't fight. You didn't stay." He flinched as though her words were knives. "I want to meet my son," he whispered desperately. Maddie inhaled deeply. "That's not a conversation for tonight." Evelyn lunged forward. "You will not allow her to take anything from us, Connor. Not your future, not this company, and certainly not." "Enough," he said sharply. Evelyn stopped cold. The entire room froze again. Connor's voice was soft, shaking but resolute. "Mother, you lost the right to make decisions for me a long time ago." Maddie watched him, surprised at the honesty in his voice but unmoved. Julian touched her hand. "You did it," he whispered. "You turned the tide." But the night was far from over. Evelyn's eyes burned with a new kind of fury, one born not of power, but of fear. And fear makes dangerous people reckless. The morning after the gala, Manhattan woke to headlines hotter than wildfire. Every major outlet, business networks, social pages, financial bulletins ran the same explosive story. Hale Tech scandal erupts at the Plaza Gala. Illegitimate child, corporate sabotage, and blackmail allegations shake Hale empire. Inside Hale Tech headquarters, chaos reigned. Board members stormed into the glass conference room, their voices sharp and panicked. Arthur Carrington sat at the end of the table, glaring at Evelyn with a fury usually reserved for enemies of the state. "This merger is dead," Arthur said coldly. "Your actions have put the entire organization at legal risk." Evelyn's jaw tightened. "We can control the narrative." "No," Arthur snapped. "You cannot. The story is everywhere. Investors are withdrawing. Our legal team is preparing for litigation. and your son, your successor, has been compromised. I quote. Connor sat farther down the table, looking like a man hollowed out from the inside. His tie hung loose, his eyes rimmed with sleeplessness. He barely resembled the golden heir he had been just 24 hours earlier. I didn't know, he murmured, again more to himself than anyone. But excuses no longer mattered. A senior board member slammed a folder onto the table. Financial discrepancies tied to your department have surfaced. Unauthorized transfers, risky holdings. We've uncovered everything you tried to hide. Connor's face blanched. It was over. Not because of Maddie, but because of his own choices Evelyn had taught him to make. Arthur stood. Effective immediately, Connor Hale is suspended pending further investigation. Evelyn shot up. You can't do this. He's the future of this company. Arthur's glare could cut steel. Your family has no future here. Not after last night. Gasps. Silence. Then the final blow. And you, Evelyn, are removed as CEO until our internal review is complete. Evelyn's breath stuttered. It was the closest she had come to breaking in public. You fools, she whispered, shaking with rage. Without me, this company collapses. Then it will collapse honestly, Arthur said, instead of rotting under your corruption. End quote. Meanwhile, across Brooklyn, Maddie sat on her balcony with a cup of coffee, the city stretching before her like a canvas she had finally earned the right to paint. She expected anxiety, fear, shame, but instead, she felt lighter. Julian arrived with pastries, setting the bag beside her. How are you holding up? She smiled faintly. Strangely okay. The world is on fire because of you, he said teasingly. I didn't want a war. No, Julian said gently, but you won one. And if 15. Liam burst onto the balcony at that moment, holding a toy sword. Mom, look, I'm protecting the castle. Julian laughed softly. Just like your mom. A warmth spread through Maddie's chest, softening the bruises left by the night before. But the peace didn't last long. Her phone buzzed. A message. From Connor. Please. I need to see you. I need to see him. I need to make this right. Maddie's fingers tightened around her phone. Julian watched her carefully. You don't owe him anything. I know, she whispered. But Liam deserves truth. And I deserve closure. Julian nodded, the understanding in his eyes deeper than words. Whatever you choose, I'm here. She looked at him, really looked at him. His steadiness, his warmth, his unwavering loyalty. He was everything she had needed 8 years ago, and everything she might want now. Later that afternoon, as Maddie walked Liam to school, a black car pulled up slowly beside the curb. The window lowered. Evelyn Hale sat inside, face pale, eyes fierce, dignity fractured. You will regret this, Evelyn hissed softly. I will not let you destroy my family. Maddie stared at her, unflinching. I didn't destroy your family, Evelyn. You did. The car sped away, and Maddie knew this was not the end of Evelyn's rage. But for the first time, she also knew. Evelyn Hale was no longer a threat. She was a defeated woman scrambling to hold on to a kingdom that had finally crumbled. Maddie took a deep breath. Her life was hers again. Her son was safe, and her future wide open. Spring settled gently over Manhattan, washing the city in soft light and restoring a sense of calm after months of chaos. But for Maddie, the real transformation wasn't in the skyline, it was in her life. 3 weeks had passed since the scandal shattered the Hale empire. Evelyn was under formal investigation. Connor had resigned amid financial scrutiny, and Hale Tech stock had plummeted so sharply that investors demanded a complete restructuring. The once unshakable dynasty was collapsing brick by brick, each piece a consequence of secrets long buried. Maddie didn't celebrate their downfall, but she allowed herself a quiet, private satisfaction. For the first time in years, she could breathe without fear. Brooks Atelier, once threatened with closure, was now flooded with new clients, prestigious hotels, luxury residences, even international investors who admired Maddie's integrity and composure under fire. The complaint against her studio had been formally dismissed, and the city issued a public apology for acting on falsified information. Justice, finally. Yet one matter remained unresolved: Connor. He reached out several times, messages filled with remorse, guilt, and pleas to meet Liam. For days, Maddie ignored them, torn between anger and a deep instinct to protect her son. But eventually, She agreed to a short meeting, under controlled circumstances, with Julian present. They met at a quiet park in Brooklyn. Connor arrived looking smaller, somehow humble, stripped of ego, stripped of privilege. He didn't wear a suit, his hair was unstyled, his eyes were red-rimmed. "Thank you for letting me come," he said, voice thin. Maddie nodded but said nothing. Liam sat beside her on the bench, swinging his legs, unaware of the gravity in the air. "Hi," Liam said politely. Connor swallowed hard. "Hi. Liam?" The boy's smile came easily. "Are you Mom's friend?" Connor's eyes filled. I'm trying to be." Julian watched quietly, ready to intervene if needed. Maddie spoke gently. "Liam, this is someone from my past, someone who made mistakes, big ones." Liam nodded, thoughtful. "Adults mess up sometimes." Connor exhaled shakily. "More than you know." There was a long, tender silence. Then Liam asked, "Do you want to draw with me?" "I brought markers." Connor's face crumpled with gratitude. "I'd like that." As the two sat on the grass drawing superheroes, Maddie stepped aside with Julian. "You did the right thing," Julian said softly. "Did I?" she whispered. "Yes," he answered, "because forgiveness isn't about him. It's about freeing yourself." "I do, Seven." She glanced back at Connor, broken, remorseful, trying in small ways to connect with a child he'd never known. Maddie nodded. "He can see Liam, but he won't be part of decisions. Not yet." Julian's smile was warm. "You're a good mother, Maddie." She looked at him, really looked at him, and felt something shift, something soft and certain. "Julian," she said quietly, "I don't know where this goes, but you've been the one constant in my life, the one who stayed." He reached for her hand. "I didn't stay out of duty. I stayed because I choose you, every time." Her breath caught. Before she could respond, Liam called from the grass. "Mom, look, we drew a new building." Julian chuckled. "Architect and designer. Dangerous duo." Maddie smiled, heart swelling. "Maybe someday." Later that evening, as they walked home, Liam between them, swinging their hands, Julian paused on the Brooklyn Bridge and faced her. "Maddie," he said softly, "you rebuilt your life alone, but you don't have to live it alone." Her breath trembled. "Are you saying what I think you're saying?" He nodded. "I love you, and I love Liam, and if you'll have us, I want a life with you." Tears welled in her eyes, not from pain, but from the healing she never thought possible. She whispered, "Yes." Julian cupped her cheek gently, and beneath the shimmering lights of Manhattan, they sealed a new beginning, born not from trauma, but from triumph. Behind them, the Hale Empire unraveled. Ahead of them, Maddie's life blossomed. For the first time, she wasn't surviving. She was living, and she was finally, beautifully free. All right. So the story has finally come to an end. And if you are still here, still listening, still feeling something in your chest right now, then that means this journey touched you in a real way. Maybe it reminded you of your own strength. Maybe it whispered something you needed to hear. Or maybe it simply showed you that healing is possible even after years of silence, betrayal, or loss. You know, Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "What stands in the way becomes the way." And that is exactly what Maddie's story teaches us. The pain that nearly broke her became the doorway to a life she never imagined. Her courage didn't grow from comfort, it grew from surviving storms she never asked for. And just like her, we all carry battles nobody else sees. But we also carry the power to rise again, to rebuild, to choose a future that honors who we are becoming. So if something in this story stayed with you, let it remind you of your own resilience. Let it remind you that your voice matters, your healing matters, and your story is not finished yet. And hey, if you're still here at this moment, then you're part of our little family now. So go ahead, like, share, and subscribe to stay with us on the next journey. We've got so many stories to tell, and I'm grateful you're here to hear them. Let's keep growing together.